Welcome to Build Bytes Daily. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most exciting and frankly game-changing features in the React world, the useServer directive. So, if you've ever felt like you're drowning in boilerplate code just to get a simple form to talk to your database, you are absolutely in the right place. This one little line of code, it's about to change everything.
I mean, think about the old way of doing things, right? You've got this simple form, but to make it work, you have to write an onSubmit handler, craft a fetch request, set up a whole new API route on your server, write the server-side logic in a totally separate file, and then you've got to come back to the client and manage all the loading and error states. It's a mountain of work for what should be a simple feature. But what if? What if you could just skip all that? What if you could call a function on your server directly from your component like it was right there?
Okay, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by talking about that client-server gap that we all know and, well, that we all deal with. Then we'll introduce the hero of our story, server functions. We'll see how they supercharge forms, how they work beyond forms, and then we'll cover the absolutely crucial rules and security you need to know. Finally, we'll land on the big takeaway that's going to change how you think about your code. Let's get to it.
So, let's set the stage. For years, our React components on the client and our logic on the server have lived in completely different worlds. They have to talk to each other through this heavily guarded border we call an API. But setting up that communication line, it requires so much manual wiring and ceremony on both sides for every single little interaction. And this, right here, this slide just nails the difference. Look at the left, the old way. It's this tangled, messy path from your component to the server. It's all that boilerplate we were just talking about. But then look at the right, the new way. It's just a clean, direct line. Your component simply calls a function. That's it. This isn't just about writing less code. It's a huge mental shift from separation to co-location, and it makes everything so much clearer.
All right, so what is the magic that makes this new direct path possible? What exactly are these server functions that seem to just break the rules of the client-server boundary?
Well, a server function is pretty much what it sounds like. It's an async function that lives and runs on your server, but you can call it from your client-side code as if it were a local function. When you add that useServer directive, you're basically telling React, hey, create a secure, secret hotline from the browser straight to this piece of server logic. You don't see any of the messy plumbing. React handles the network request, the data transfer, all of it. All you have to do is just write and call a function. It's amazing.
And you're not going to believe how simple the syntax is. You just write the string useServer at the very top of any async function. That's it. Or, here's a pro tip. If you have a whole file of server-only utilities, just put that directive at the very top of the file one time. And boom, every single exported function in that file is now a server function you can call from the client.
Now, let's get practical. Server functions are super flexible, but their number one, most powerful use case is with good old HTML forms. React has really leaned into this, and this is where the developer experience is just completely transformed.
It's a beautifully simple two-step dance. Step 1, you write your server logic inside an async function and you mark it with useServer. And the best part, React automatically takes all the data from your form and just hands it to you as a form data object. Step 2, you take that function and pass it directly to the form's action prop. Not an onSubmit handler, but the action prop itself. And that's it.
Just look at this code. I mean, really look at it. That request username function could be running on a server thousands of miles away, but we're just passing it into the action prop like it's no big deal. And notice what's missing, right? There's no event.prevent default, there's no onSubmit handler, and there is absolutely no fetch call anywhere. React is doing all of that heavy lifting for us, behind the scenes. And this leads to a massive benefit that's easy to miss, progressive enhancement. Because we're using a standard HTML form tag, it just works. Even if the user's JavaScript fails to load, the form will still submit to the server. Then, once the JavaScript does load, React seamlessly takes over and enhances it into a modern, single-page app experience without a full-page reload. You get the best of both worlds, a resilient form that works from the get-go.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This is great, but how do I get feedback? How does my component know if the form submission worked or if there was an error? How do I show a little success message or an error next to an input field? That's a critical question.
And the answer is a purpose-built hook called useActionState. It's actually really clever. You give this hook your server action, and it gives you back the latest state that was returned from the server, like an error message, and a new action to pass to your form.
So it basically acts as a little bridge, letting your server logic send state updates directly back to the component that called it. But it's not just about forms, right? What about all the other places we need to talk to the server, like a simple like button or a delete icon on an item in a list? Well, the great news is server functions have you covered there too. You can trigger them from pretty much any UI event you can think of. For these cases, when you're not in a form, you just need one more tool from your toolbox, the useTransition hook. You wrap your server call in a function called startTransition. This tells React, hey, I'm about to do something that might take a second, so please keep the UI responsive and don't freeze up. And as a bonus, the hook gives you a handy isPending boolean, which is perfect for showing loading spinners or disabling buttons.
This like button example is perfect. You see that isPending state? We can use that to disable the button while the request is in flight. No more accidental double clicks. Then, inside our onClick handler, we call startTransition, and we can safely await our server function. Once we get the result back, we can update our local UI state. It's just a really clean, solid pattern for any kind of UI-triggered mutation.
Okay, everybody, let's pause for a second because we need to talk about what is, without a doubt, the most important part of this whole thing: the rules and security. When you start blurring the lines between client and server like this, you absolutely must understand the guardrails. Getting this wrong is not an option because it can open up some serious security holes. So please, pay close attention here.
Let's just run through these. The useServer directive has to be the very first line. It has to be in a server-side file. The function has to be async, and, this is a big one, server functions are for mutations, things that change data. Don't use them for just fetching data. But listen, if you remember nothing else, remember this. Any arguments you get in a server function come from the client, and therefore, they cannot be trusted. You have to treat all input as potentially malicious. Sanitize your data, and always check user permissions on the server before you do anything.
And finally, there's a technical rule you have to know. Because this is all happening over the network, anything you pass to or return from a server function has to be serializable. Now that's just a fancy word that means it can be turned into a string and sent over the internet. So things like numbers, strings, dates, and plain objects are totally fine, but you can't pass complex things like functions or class instances or JSX. This boundary is key to how it all works.
So after all that, let's zoom out. We've seen how it works, but let's talk about why it matters. What's the big picture? What is the real paradigm shift that useServer is bringing to the table for us as developers? It really all comes down to a shift in your mental model. We can finally stop thinking about our front end and our back end as two completely separate applications that we have to painstakingly wire together. Instead, your server logic, your mutations, they just become another set of functions that are available to your component tree. This co-location simplifies everything. It demolishes boilerplate, and it just makes building full-stack features so much faster.
This is a really fundamental change, and it opens the door to entirely new ways of building apps. It's more than just a little convenience. It's a new way of thinking about the web. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. How is having the full power of your server, just a simple function call away, going to change the way you build your next application?
If this deep dive into React's useServer helped you connect the dots, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to BuildBytesDaily. We're always breaking down the latest tools and techniques that are shaping the future of the web. Thanks so much for watching, and happy coding!